It is the first wrap-up of the year. For the first month of the year, I read 11 books, so not too shabby, and a lot of them were really, really good. And it was a nice variety this time around. I read a mystery, there's some horror, of course, fantasy, fiction, and one that was just straight up really weird, which I liked, but it was very strange, and we'll get into that. Hopefully your new year is going alright so far. This year started out okay, and then my partner and I both got COVID. That sucked quite a bit, but I still managed to film through all of that. So if you see a couple videos where I don't seem as myself, or my voice maybe sounds kind of like, I don't know, blah, like that, if it sounds blah, then that's why. That was kind of a drag for the first part of the year, but that was the first time I've ever had it. I somehow managed to avoid it for 3 years, and yeah, it's over now, so we're gonna get into our January wrap-up. So the first book I read of the year was absolutely fantastic. It was A Psalm for the Wild Bill by Becky Chambers, and if you haven't read this duology yet, it's so good. It's just so heartfelt. I feel like what the main character, Sibling Dex, goes through is just how we probably all have felt at one point or another in our lives. And the book premise is there used to be all these robots that they worked in factories, this, that, and the other, and at some point they become self-aware, and then they go off into the wilderness and they're like, bye! And go do their own thing. The story starts out and it follows this character, Sibling Dex, and they're a garden monk. But they decide that they want to be a tea monk because they're having kind of like a quarter-life crisis, or I'm not quite sure how old they are, but they are just kind of tired of what they've been doing and they want to learn how to do it themselves. And so they become a tea monk. And tea service, basically you set out tea and people come and you listen to their problems, their fears, their hopes, their dreams, their losses. And the first time Sibling Dex does this, it does not go very well. It goes pretty awful, but Sibling Dex eventually becomes like a really great tea monk. And at some point, this also becomes not enough and they want more. And so they head out into the wilderness, and then this is where they encounter Mosscap, the robot who just kind of saunters out of the woods, and then they set off on this journey. The robots want to know, what the humans need. And so it focuses around that question. What do we need? What is our purpose? What are we striving for? And it's sweet and it's simple in how it goes about it. And it was just such a beautiful story. And it's a novella. As I said, it's a duology. So I read that. I loved it. I immediately had to get the second in the series, which was A Prayer for the Crown Shy. It follows on with the journey as Mosscap and Sibling Dex come back to society. And they go to all these different towns, and the robot asks its question of what do the humans need, and it follows that theme, and it just was so great. So my first read of the year was absolutely fantastic. The first two, A Psalm for the Wild Bill and A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers. And then I also read Lavender House by Lev A.C. Rosen. This is a queer mystery. It's about this woman who mysteriously dies. They live in this house called Lavender House. At Lavender House, everyone lives and they're open and they don't have to worry about society being hateful POSs. So now, though, the conundrum is that if this woman was murdered, they may be keeping a murderer in with them. So they end up hiring a detective to come and to figure out if this was a murder and what happened and who done it. And it was really good. I definitely enjoyed it. I've been enjoying getting back into mysteries a little bit. I used to like those a lot when I was younger. So I've read a couple recently. And hopefully I'll read a few more this year as we go. Next, we read Stella Maris by Cormac McCarthy. Another duology. That was a continuation of the book The Passenger. It continues on. The first book focused on the brother, Bobby. He was a salvage diver, and kind of like his relationship with his sister and his relationship with others, and just a bunch of weird stuff happened to him. But in Stella Maris, it focuses on the sister, and she's been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and it has these conversations that she has with her doctor just about all sorts of stuff about life, what is reality, and talking about why she gave up on mathematics, which was one of her major passions, and music, which was also kind of a passion, but why she didn't quite follow it like she did mathematics. And just, it was a really beautiful book, and it was strange, sad, emotional and heartfelt and just really, really awesome. And those 2 books were my first experience of Cormac McCarthy. I haven't read any of the other ones. Like, I think one of the most well-known that everyone says to read is The Road. Next up, I read Pure Color by Sheila Heti. I had seen this book around here and there. There's a booktuber, Allison Pages, and she had read it, and it was one of her top books of last year. And so I was like, all right, I really like her a lot. I'm gonna pick up this book and see what it's all about. It's so strange and weird and whimsical, and it's not your typical book. It's like an artist's interpretation of a book. If you've read it, you know. If you haven't, I do have a standalone review of it. I will link that down below if you're interested in checking it out, because I'll go more into depth, but it's just weird. It's so weird. And then I read Haunted by Darcy Coates. This is my second Darcy Coates book. I am becoming a big fan. I've only read 2, but I love them both. And this is the one that my librarian recommended to me. It was absolutely awesome. She's most well known for doing haunted house stories, but this was a being lost in the woods story, and it was creepy and scary. And it's so just fast-paced and so highly addictive when you read it. You just can't put it down. This is one of those kept me up till 4 a.m. books, and it was really awesome. And so I will definitely be reading more Darcy Coates this year. If you have any suggestions, if you have a favorite, let me know. I've only read Gallows Hill and Hunted, so she has a ton more books. And then I wanted to revisit an old friend, and I hadn't read this book in years. I don't know how many years, a lot. But that was The Shining by Stephen King. Honestly, it was just as good as I remember. I saw definitely some new things in it when I read, because when I read it originally, I was a teenager. So I don't think I realized the depth and how horrible Jack Torrance's alcoholism was this time around. And having experienced and been around, you know, dealing with people with alcoholism, it just really, it shined a light on that, and it was even more intense, I think, than before. But it's just such a good story, and so deranged and creepy, and it was so good. It was so good to reread that, and I can't believe I didn't know that Dr. Sleep was the sequel. How did I not know that? I mean, it came out like a million years later. I think it came out in 2013. So I'm going to be reading that this coming year as well. Some more Darcy Coates, more Stephen King. We're doing good this year too with like reading more fantasy. So we'll see how it goes. Then I was traumatized by How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. And creepy dolls and creepy puppets freak me out. And the story centers around these creepy puppets and dolls. There are these 2 siblings, and the parents pass away suddenly. And so the sister comes back home, and the brother had always lived in the town and lived around that area. They go to sell their parents' house, and you know, they go in there and they're gonna clean it out, and in the one room there's all these dolls all set up. In my brain it sounds like there's hundreds of them. There's a ton. Some are little ones, others are like 3 feet tall. And then there's the puppets, because the mom was this puppeteer and had this Christian puppet ministry that acted out Bible stories and stuff. When the brother and sister go back to the house to try and clear it out, weird stuff starts happening, and it's so creepy. But it was also funny, you know, trying to repair these horribly broken relationships, because the brother and sister had a terrible relationship. They were pretty much estranged and just kind of like almost hated each other, and it was watching how they tried to fix this relationship, coming to each other's aid and all of that. And I really enjoy the way that Grady Hendrix writes. It's really good, and I like the humor that's interjected in that too. But good lord, was I traumatized by the puppets. They're so freaky. And then I read a couple books about cats, because I do like cats quite a bit. I have a cat. His name is Mittens. I don't know what he's doing right now. He's probably up to no good. Maybe he's sleeping. Who knows? So the first one was She and Her Cat by Makoto Shinkai, and this is 4 different stories, and they all interconnect. And I thought that was really cool. The cats kind of know each other, and some of the owners of the cats know each other, and it was sweet and heartfelt and emotional. And there's even this wise old sage of a dog named John. who is friends with the cats and has this otherworldly wisdom that he bestows upon them. And it was just very sweet. It was a novella. It was a very short read, but it was a very feel-good read, and I really, really liked it quite a bit. And then the next one I read, also featuring a cat, The Cat Who Saved Books. And that was by Sosuke Natsukawa. I hope I am saying that right. This book centers around grief and dealing with grief. There's this teenage boy and his grandfather passes on, and he just at first doesn't really know how to deal with any of that. And his grandfather owned a bookstore. The boy loves to read and loves books, like absolutely loves books. And so one day when he's in the bookstore, just very shortly after his grandfather had passed, this cat shows up, Tiger the Tabby. Tiger the Tabby wants help him save some books. To do this, they have to go into these labyrinths and confront these, I don't know if they're evil, these people who want to destroy books and convince them otherwise. It's about finding your inner hidden strengths, overcoming and coming to terms with your grief and being helped to be pulled out of your sadness in yourself and all of that. And it was a really beautiful story. Also, that was another novella. It was really short and sweet. Both of the cat books were, and I really enjoyed those. I like reading books with animals featured. It's funny, my grandma used to read this series of books called The Cat Who, and it was all these mysteries by this author, Lillian Jackson Braun. And when I was younger, I think I kind of thought that was dumb. Well, I was dumb because I didn't realize that that's pretty cool. I've never read any of those books. I should probably try to read at least one of them, in honor of Grandma. I really like reading books that have animals that are, either if they talk or they're just a prominent feature in that book. Because think about it. Think about most of us have pets and they're like family member, so they're very prominent. So it's nice to read books about that. I don't know, just my opinion. And then I read this book called The Thing in the Snow by Sean Adams. This book was weird, kind of like a 3-star read for me. I liked it, I thought it was good, but I felt, I don't know, I'm not disappointed, but not fully satisfied with the book. It's about this slow descent into madness, and it's weird and strange, and I usually like that stuff, but I felt like the book was always just level. I never felt like there was any spikes or any super exciting things happening. It was all kind of like do-do-do-do-do-do-do, and it was good, but it was, I don't know, it was alright. There's this institute, and it's somewhere, they don't know where they are, and they're in this building. There's these 3 characters that are tasked with kind of doing these different tasks every week, and then there's this other researcher that's doing whatever kind of research that he's doing. So there's 4 of them all together. Living in this weird location has some strange effects on the psyche and how these people act and interact with each other, and it was strange, and seeing that, the psychological effects of it on people, and being in this weird northern climate where you can't go outside because of subarctic temperatures and all that, and they're concerned about if they ever got any snow sickness and this, that, and the other. And then one day, all of a sudden, they see this thing out in the snow. They don't know what it is, and they had end up sending a note to the supervisor. The supervisor kind of blows it off, and so they're like, what is this thing? And then it's weird. That's all I can say about it. It was alright. If you are interested in any of these books, I will have links down below. Those are affiliate links. So a little bit goes to the channel, and then it also goes to support indie bookstores. And if you're a fan of videos where I talk about multiple books that I'm reading, the next video coming up will be another video about many books that I have read. So stick around, check it out. And if you had fun hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.